Because of my passion for online entrepreneurship and in believing the impact we can make if we can all discover our purpose and do what we love, the Passion and Purpose podcast was born. I hope to share more inspiring adventures with you along with the people who have been there and done that. All right. Welcome to the Passion and Purpose podcast, everyone, where we give you inspiring adventures. And we're here again to discuss all about when to listen and when to talk in meetings. And my very special guest for you today is from the UK. Her name is Fiona Kearns. So let me introduce her to you very briefly. Fiona is a business psychologist who helps people get rid of self-doubt, own their skill set, and feel confident about playing huge in life and at work. She is experienced in the IT, telecom, and nonprofit world. She is also a member of the Association of Business Psychology and author of How to Increase Your Confidence. She specializes in helping leaders fulfill their potential in business. Wow. And Fiona also loves the thrill of helping clients manage their imposter syndrome to become confident, more visible, and impactful. Wow. So without further ado, let me introduce you, Miss Fiona Kearns. Fiona, you can say hi to everyone.
Hey everyone, I'm Fiona Kearns, and as Rochelle has said, I'm a business psychologist and I'm based in the UK. However, what you might not know is I'm Irish. Well, you may recognize the accent, but I'm also a mum to 3 children, 3 boys, including twins. So I have a 5-year-old and twin 3-year-old. So that's a little bit extra that's not in my bio.
Wow, I cannot imagine. 3-year-olds. Wow, I have a 2-year-old here and it's already chaotic. So I can't imagine having 2. Whew. All right, so Fiona, I'm so excited because our topic for today is very important for everyone who's starting in business, and even if they're not in business, even if they're just they wanted to level up their career. It's all about how to when to talk and when not, when to listen and when to talk in meetings. Can you tell us why this is something that they should really listen to?
This is critical to everyone, whether you have a job and you've got a career that you're trying to develop, or you run your own business, or you're a community activist worker. Meetings are where so many decisions are made. So it's absolutely critical that you contribute and, where possible, get the result you want from meetings. Meetings are like an expanded conversation with multiple parties. And on the face of it, you could think, oh, it's straightforward. It's just lots of people and everybody has an equal weight. However, we all know that that's not the reality. There are power dynamics in meetings, particularly if you've got seniors in a meeting and you're perhaps more junior, or you've got a client and maybe you're a little bit overawed by their size and perhaps the depth of their pockets as well. However, it's so important for each individual that goes into a meeting that they're clear about why they're there and the purpose, if they can. And if you're running the meeting yourself, it's absolutely vital that you are clear. Ideally, that you would have an agenda for the meeting, but we don't always have control over that. But the principle here is that in this complex, very complex conversation, it's important that you know your own goals and you know when to listen and when to speak. And of course, as the old saying goes, here in Europe at least, we've 2 ears and 1 mouth. So those are usually the proportions that can be used as a rule of thumb, so to speak.
Wow, we've only been on for like less than 2 minutes and you've already said a lot of information, and I'm sure that they're already digesting it. Wow. Now let's get on to the first question. What are the tips that you can give to them on how to get started with a conversation, how to build rapport and yet take control of the conversation so that you can really achieve your goals? Because let's face it, not all meetings end up the way that we expect it to end. So what can you tell about that?
Certainly not. The number one tip is to listen carefully. And that's a very good way to build rapport. And that's very important here at the moment. But you can actually listen in lots of ways. You can listen by looking, seeing what people are doing. Everything being in the online world at the moment, Rochelle, we don't have all the physical cues that we might have if we were face to face. So it's important we consider the energy of the person, what they're looking like, how they're sitting. And bearing in mind, we don't have full view of them. You know, we are a little bit limited, so we have to pay more attention.
Especially if it's done online, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think we have to make more of an effort online rather than less of an effort. I know when I've done this before, and I've done a talk about body language in virtual meetings, for example, and I put out to the group if they had any questions they wanted to know about body language. And it was interesting from the perspective of individuals who wanted to know how they could look interested. They didn't say how to look interested when I'm not. And does body language matter when you can't really see what's going on anyway? And I found those more interesting from the perspective of how people view meetings in general. And we know one of the problems with meetings are that we have too many of them, for starters. We also have too many people in the meeting, and people feel that they're a waste of time. So people are thinking, oh, how can I look interested when I don't want to be here? I'm not that interested. I'm not sure why I've been called in here. I've 20 other things I could do. So I think it's all those challenging things, but it's be engaged, because if you're in the meeting, you're supposed to be there, and your job is to be engaged, although the online meetings are quite involved and they're draining, because you feel like you're always looking, and then having to engage with this camera all the time it's hard going. And in terms of the rapport piece, it's looking at the camera. You don't have to stare at it all the time, but spend a lot of the time looking at the camera. And one tip, and this is not mine, but I must confess I don't know where I heard it. Somebody said put a post-it or a sticky note on where your camera is, saying look here.
Look here.
If you need a reminder to look there. And I think that's useful. I think the principles for rapport broadly remain the same as they would be in person. It's to engage with the person, it's to listen, it's to look at them, it's to mirror what they're doing as far as possible, and just watch out for where they are and match them. That's one of the really good ways to build rapport. So I think the principles are the same online. I think we have to invest a little bit more energy to do it well. That would be my suggestion for the online side of things in terms of building rapport.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. There was a time when I was in a meeting, and I can really feel that the energy of the person that I am talking to is not, at the same level as my energy. So what can you suggest? Because sometimes you can really feel it in the body language alone. They don't have to talk. And if you are talking to somebody that is not at par, at least with your energy level, how are you going to, turn the conversation around?
I think the first thing to do is to, as far as possible, match their energy in the beginning. It's that mirroring strategy. Yes, to come down if you need to, because if you're at a completely different pace, and think of how you move, how you breathe, how you speak. If you're high energy, and I think you and I perhaps are high energy people
almost
in this context, certainly.
Yeah.
But if we were in different places, in order for us to connect properly, if I was at a lower pace and I was at a different level, I would find it very difficult to connect with your high energy. So in order to connect, you need to level out the energies. So you can meet them at their level, engage with them, endeavor to bring them into the conversation so that you're matching. And then you can start lifting it somewhat. You can start, when you're matching and you're in the same place, you can lift it up a bit. Not to perhaps the original level.
Not directly.
Not like you can bring it up gradually. You can bring it up gradually. but you're not going to change it dramatically because people are in a particular place. And usually they have their own baseline as well in terms of where they feel comfortable. So I think if you really want to get a good outcome, it's up to you to take responsibility, take control, match them, get into their wavelength, and then try and raise it a little bit if you can, if you want to bring it up slightly. But the main thing is to meet them where they're at. That's always the case for any person in any conversation. You meet people where they're at, you listen, you get curious about what's going on for them, what's happening if they're in this place. That's up to you. And it's a choice that we make whether to do it or not. We can either leave a meeting and say, oh, they were really downbeat and it was no to everything and I just couldn't connect with them. And that does happen despite any efforts. However, it's more often that we can find a way through it if we get rid of our own ego.
Yes. Actually, my next question is about that. How can you avoid asking questions that the other person would feel uncomfortable asking? For example, in building rapport, you ask questions like, how are you today? How's the weather there? But sometimes you slip your tongue because maybe you are too comfortable, or you get on that meeting with your energy at 100% level, which is not at the same level as the other person that you're meeting with. So is there a what do you call it, a mistake proof, rapport building question that you can suggest to anyone that is starting a meeting and wanted it to turn out well?
I think people understand the small talk, how's the weather, what's going on. In these times, we're all wondering and we're curious about what COVID restrictions are in certain countries. We've got that general sense, and it doesn't kind of impinge our personal space, so you're not asking me how my family are, and I might be, some people would be comfortable with that. Some people would not be comfortable. That would be off limits. So I think people understand that that's a way that you can connect and give a little bit about yourself without it being a bit too intrusive.
Nosy.
I think in a conversation where you're moving beyond that and you need to ask conversations because you're scoping out a project and so on, I think this is about cultivating your own style to an extent. What I do is, if I get the sense that I'm asking a lot of questions, I would just call it out. Rochelle, you probably think, gosh, you're asking a lot of questions, Fiona. But honestly, Rochelle, it's just because I'm curious to learn more about you and your organization, for example. So I like the calling it out scenario because it gives context to scenario. When I'm working with my clients, and I'm a business psychologist and I'm a coach, and the thing about questions are that they can come across as people is trying to attack you. So if we feel that people are trying to attack you by asking lots of questions, you can tend to go on the defensive. So if I felt that you were asking me lots and lots of questions, I feel defensive, and I'm kind of, the rapport is blocked off to a degree. I'm thinking, I don't really like her. There's something about her I don't like, but maybe I can't put my finger on it. So what I like to do, it's in the same vein as calling it out, but when I'm working with my clients, I will often set the scene in the beginning, because when I start working with a client, there's going to be lots of questions, because in order to help somebody, it's useful for me to get the true landscape. And when people are open and honest, it gives me a true picture of what their challenges are and how we can work to improve them. So I will often start out by saying, do you know, I'm going to ask lots of questions, and you might feel that I'm asking too many, and we can have the sense that, you're under attack, so to speak. But just know that's not what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on, and, feel free to tell me to stop at any stage. So I think there's something about that transparency and being clear about what your objective is, and not that people might feel under attack, but also maybe not understand why they feel that way. But when you set the scene for them, that helps them feel more comfortable. You're hopefully getting the information you need in order to make this relationship a success. And indeed, that builds trust, which is fundamental to building rapport with the individuals that you're working with.
Wow. Yes, I believe that. Actually, in most trainings, for some people call it the discovery session, some people call it the strategy session. There are what they called scripts, and setting on the tone of the meeting is always at the top of the script. But for people who are just starting out and are just testing the script on what will work for them and what will not, for starting entrepreneurs specifically, what can you give them in terms of advice, of course, on what to choose between those scripts? How to choose the questions, or are they going to start all of the questions right away, or just choose what are they comfortable asking first, or they can rearrange it? What can you tell them in terms of seeing a strategy script and feeling compelled to really use it, especially for the first time?
Yeah. I think doing anything for the first time is really difficult. And I think there's a certain amount of work to be done before you get to that point, because truthfully, you probably need to fail a bit to truly learn.
Yeah.
And everybody talks about, the benefits of failing, but the reality is in the moment is pretty horrible. So we tend not to want to do it. So I think role playing, which people don't like either, is really useful in order to kind of put things out there, and you can be a little bit softer or harder than it would be in the scenario. But I think in terms of the questions, you need to know your priorities in terms of what are the priority questions for you. You don't need to get every answer in a single meeting. So it's about thinking about, this is a relationship, and it's also around checking if there's another way to get that information. So in my strategy or discovery sessions, I will have always asked my client to fill out a questionnaire, for example, but I will still ask questions in our sessions as well. So there isn't a one size fits all, but I think it's up to you to understand your priorities in terms of what you need to know, get clear on how you do it, and try out a few different things, because everybody has their own personality. I have a very particular way of dealing with things. You will have another. Everybody has a slightly different way. So some of it's about finding your own personality and how you deliver that. But the fundamentals are always around, what do you need to achieve? What's the must have in this meeting? And then what are the extra nice things? And it's also about understanding ahead of time, what are the next steps? What's the follow on with this meeting? What are you setting up further down the line? And getting a sense of where the person you're speaking to is comfortable as well. Because the meeting, it's all about relationships. So this is about building. And I think most people will get a sense of where the other person is at and where they're comfortable, and maybe where they feel you're not quite on the case. And then you can tweak that and you can circle back to it and so on. And you can explain why you're looking for things, or use more open questions. Tell me about that. I'd love to hear more about that. Tell me about that successful project. Tell me what a really great looks like for you if you're scoping out something with your client. What's the ideal for you? What problems have you got in the past? And always focus on the results that are going to be achieved and will benefit you both as a result of working together. And that's the idea of any relationship, a friendship, a business partnership. It's all about something that's going to benefit everybody. And if it doesn't benefit everybody, it's not going to last that long realistically. Yeah, it might last a year, it might last 2, but it's not going to be a good one, and it's likely to end badly. But if you're serious about having that collaborative partnership approach, it has to be a win-win. And so it's not so much about the order and the script in terms of a one size fits all. It's about figuring out what's going to work for you and the other person in the meeting, and getting clear on what you want. Clarity is the key thing here. Get really clear on what you need in order to move this ahead in a way that will benefit both of you. And then you can say all those things. You can say, I'm asking lots of questions, but it's because I really want to know and I want to be sure I can help you. I want to make sure that this is going to work for everybody here. I'm sure you've had projects that didn't work out. So in order to make sure that we're setting the right groundwork here, how about we do this? And you can always check in at the start that they're okay with that. There are lots and lots of things that can be done. So it's trial and error and figuring out what works for you and then working it through so you make sure it's always win-win.
Yeah, I like what you mentioned about failure, that they should fail in the first few tries, of course. And sometimes even if you're doing it for 100 times, you get mistakes as well. And it's okay. We should embrace mistakes. And then the second one that you mentioned is by preparing a questionnaire right before you get into the meeting. I was in fact already thinking about how we started, when we connected via the Facebook group, and then I invited you, of course, over to this podcast, and then I sent you the podcast speaker form. Now I'm already thinking if I will be increasing the question in there or just keep it that way. All right. Thank you so much. I'm already learning a lot, and I'm sure that the listeners are already, taking down notes as we speak. Now, there is a question here that I've been wanting to ask as well. Now, how do you think we should ask questions that you are not sure the answers for? So I'm pretty sure that is something that when asked to anybody, especially if they're starting entrepreneurs, would make a lot of rats racing in their chest. It would feel like very uncomfortable. So what can you tell about that?
I think there's a few different approaches, and the answer depends somewhat on what the reason you don't know the answer. So some things that you just don't know the answer and you're not expected to know the answer, please tell me when we'll all be able to get back on planes and go on holidays. You probably hazard a guess, and you might be right and you might be wrong, but actually you don't really know. So you can come out and say, it's hard to say at this point, but with the data that we have, it's looking like between June to October later this year, we'll be able to fly. Okay. So there you've referenced the information that you've got, which is, these are projections maybe you've seen in the news or someplace else, some travel organization, articulated that was the case. Or you feel it's just an educated guess on your behalf, but it's not based on any certainty, and you wouldn't write it into a contract that was what it was. It's an educated guess, and you're giving a range to people. You're saying this will, I think it'll be between June and October or whatever time frame that you have set. That's the best estimate of it. And I think that's okay. I think giving a range when you don't have all the data is useful. I think in what you need to watch out for here is looking for things that people expect you to know that perhaps you don't know. Because you can say things like, that's a really good question and I don't have the most up-to-date information, but from past experience, 3 years ago, this was the trend. The current trend, it's not clear yet what it is, but I know there's some new reports coming out and I'd be happy to share them with you when they're available. So it's a little bit of a fudge, but I think mostly it's about being able to deal with the question and answer it in the best way that you can. But the other thing about it is it's figuring out what's the concern for them behind the question. So sometimes if people are asking you lots of questions, so earlier, for example, we were talking about when we were asking somebody else lots of questions, but if somebody is asking you lots of questions, yes, they want to learn more about you. They want to feel like they can trust you or that they can't trust you. Maybe they're trying to catch you out. And you can manage that to some degree, but it's difficult if somebody has made a decision on you already. But it's about how you present and go back to them on these things. And if somebody's making a decision of you, what comes to mind in this scenario is, say you were pitching for funding for your business. So you decide you're going to scale your business and you need some funding. And you go to a pitch event, a bit of Dragon's Den, Shark's Tank, I'm not sure what the local equivalent might be, where you have a panel of entrepreneurs and they've got all the money on the table and they'll invest in you if they like you and so on. And they grill you and they want to know all about your finances and so on. often what they want to know are the things behind that. They want to know about you. They want to know about your background. They want to know what you're made of. And they will forgive a lot if they think there's something in there that they can clutch onto that is investable. I think investable is probably not a real word. In any case, you understand the concept.
Yeah.
So it sometimes is getting behind what they're actually asking. So, if people are really focusing on, service level agreements, for example, and they're really keen on what's the escalation process and what will happen, something happens on midnight on a Saturday, and, will you come fix the problem? So what that is telling you is, yes, you need to articulate what your service level agreement is. So, it's one price for 8x5x4. That's basically office hours during the week. And then if you want this 24/7, we come fix it. Well, that's another price, and that's fine. And you explain that. But often what they're saying there is they really want you to give them more comfort about your service. So yes, you want to articulate that that's what you do, but you also want to be saying, we rarely have outages and issues at any time of the day or night. So, it doesn't, I appreciate you need to know, but actually it happens so rarely. I don't think you should worry about it. You will have my cell phone number. So you'll have my mobile phone number. So you know what? If it does, if you're comfortable with it, and it depends on what you want. But the point here is about giving them the comfort that they want. When they're seeking answers, they're seeking comfort and they're seeking a solution. And they want to feel like they've got comfort working with you in terms of not worrying about if they choose you as a new provider, for example. They want to know what they're going to get and will you look out for them and so on. So if you can help them get the outcome they want from the question indirectly, if you can't give them the answer. So, say in that scenario, you don't offer 24/7 cover. You're saying, we rarely have those issues. It's all automated. The system fails over if there's ever any issues. However, you always have my number. You always have this.
You can wake me up in the middle of the night.
Absolutely. So what you're delivering is comfort, and you're answering an unsaid question sometimes instead of the direct question that they've asked you.
Wow. Yes, I believe that. Actually, one question that has been playing on my mind while you were talking is that when you are in a meeting, you have this goal, of course, but the other party, they have their goals too. So I think what's important is that you have to prioritize the goal of your client, because you're not just there to sell or to close a deal. You're there to help the other party, the other person. That's why they seek for your help. So whatever service or whatever product that you are offering to that person, they need it. So all you just need to do is just tell them how that product or that service can benefit them and can answer whatever problems they have, or if it can make their lives easier, it can make them happier. So I think that's just it. You just have to be honest, and if you can offer, of course, if you can over deliver, they call it the extra service, then better, right? So I think that's one thing that they can also think about when they're setting up a meeting. They don't have to be scared. Sometimes it's really scary. I was, scared when I started this podcast, and not every day that we are confident enough to do what we wanted to do. But that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. We have to be uncomfortable so that we can be comfortable in the future, right?
Absolutely. And I love what you're saying there, because that is absolutely correct. It's always about the results. When people don't talk about features, talk about benefits. I would say just talk about the results that are going to be achieved through working together with a product or service. As you say, it's all about results. Then that's the win-win for everybody.
Yeah, actually, that's my next question, but I think we already discussed about that. But maybe we can expand that a bit. How are we going to drive the conversation so that we could reach a win-win solution? Because not all meetings end up, the way that we want it, right? And not all of the parties in the meeting end up happy. when they put down the phone or when they turn off the meeting room. So, what are the tips that you can give them so that we can arrive at a win-win situation?
The very first thing I would say is that it's often good when you don't get a yes or the answer that you want, because then it's just not a good fit, because you may not be the right provider for the person that you're dealing with and so on. And there can be lots of reasons why you are not a good fit. And that seems bad at the outset because perhaps you want the business, but in fact, if you're not a good fit for each other, it's better to find out early.
Yes.
So being clear on your objectives and be clear on the results that you deliver, and indeed clear on your pricing at an earlier rather than later stage, is advantageous. But yes, they can come away thinking you're too expensive or you don't, cover the scope that they want and so on. And you can review that and check that in with your business. However, I know from experience that you can spend months and months and months trying to work with a client, try and get a fit when there's just no fit. And it's a waste of many, many, many people's time and hours and investment. It's tedious. So getting the wrong outcome or something that you didn't want is not always a bad thing. However, obviously, there are times when we both want something and we're not getting what we want out of it. And that is sometimes digging a bit deeper. What did we miss? Could we have a conversation, one-on-one conversation with somebody to find out a little bit more? When you're working with an organization in particular, it's really useful to have a champion, if you like, somebody who wants to work with you, because that can be your person who internally is saying, hey, we should work with this person, this team, this organization. And then it's a cue for you to ring that person and say, hey, what did you think of the meeting? I thought we were probably all a bit disappointed by the end, or I was a bit disappointed at the end. I thought it was going to go in a different direction, or I didn't feel like I hit the mark. I didn't feel like I was saying what you wanted me to hear. But I actually think we would be a great fit for you, your team, your organization. Just curious to know what you thought. Now, if they're open enough, they may give you some insight on that, or they could be just closed and say, no, it's just the way it is. But often you'll get a little bit more insight. And that insight could be, well, the FD, the financial director, has just decided they're probably going to go a different direction, or they didn't think your numbers were strong enough, or they were concerned because you're not rated by an industry partner, you don't have a Gartner report or something like that. So then it's looking at those objections and finding a way to deal with those. So there's no magic answer for these things. This is just purely figuring out if there's another way that you can show them what you can do, because in the meeting, somehow you didn't show them exactly what you could do and you want a second go at it. And then if you're able to speak to your champion, then you can say, what does the financial director like? Does she like a 55-page report, or would she like an A4 summary of how we overcome that? Because then you can do that. You can do up your A4. She won't want a 50-page report. Nobody wants it. But if you have that objective, you can do your little report and explain where you fit into things. You send her a little video message and explain to her the context, and you never know. I think it's about being persistent in these things. I don't think you can always get the right outcome. I don't think that's always a bad thing. I think it's good to get the no's. But I think when you really feel it's the good fit, you need to dig a little bit deeper to see if you can get a conversation, a one-on-one conversation, to get a little bit more information, overcome the objections if you can. And that, again, is building that rapport. Imagine if you did that, you got that little bit of information, you sent something short over to the financial director. She might not change her mind, but I think she would remember you. And there's a chance that you could still be in play in that game. So I think it's worth a shot. So and I think then you will learn in future meetings that that's something you need to cover off more, or you find out about the stakeholders in the meeting, what they need, because all meetings is about stakeholder management and understanding who's making the decision, what's important to them. So that could be a preparation step that you haven't covered off, maybe because you didn't know they were coming in or something like that. But it's all just really good learning and getting into the minds of the people that are in the meeting and to help them make the decision that will work for you and for them. And if you think what you have will really help them, then you want to move mountains to try and get to that place with them.
Wow. Yeah, I can remember last night. I think it was I started the Tony Robbins challenge last Friday, and I just finished it today. Yeah, and he played a video clip from the founder of Spanx. Yep.
Yes.
That lady, yeah, her name, I think her name is Stacy, or maybe I forgot her name, but the story really stuck to me because the first time that she offered Spanx to Newman's, maybe that's a very popular, store in the US. I'm not very particular about it. But she said that she called every day for a week without leaving a message, because she said that if you're a salesperson, you know that you don't leave a message because they are not going to call you back. So she called until somebody answers, and then until she got an appointment, 10-minute appointment with the manager. And then she flew all the way to California at that time. I forgot where she came from. And then she had the 10-minute meeting, and then she said by 5-minute mark she can see that she's gonna she's not gonna make it, because she can see the non-verbal what do you call it, the non-verbal actions,
the non-verbal cues.
Non-verbal cues. And she said, can you come to the bathroom with me? And of course the lady was, what? That's so weird. Why are you gonna come? What am I, you know what, they're both ladies, but that's very weird. I promise you, just for 5 minutes, go to the bathroom with me. I just need to show you something. And then she wore she has a slacks. She brought a slacks. She wore it without the Spanx. And then she removed it and she wore it with the Spanx. And then the manager saw the difference of the curves. Of course, Spanx is a very popular underwear that helps shapen, the ladies' butts and curves, it hides some imperfections. And then when she saw that, she says, I'm willing to try for minimum of 7 stores at Newman's. So she got the contract with that one particular request, which is very unusual to ask for somebody to go to the bathroom with you. If online, that's something that we cannot do, of course. But if you can go an extra mile, to win a contract, to get into a win-win solution with someone, then go ahead and grab it. Don't be scared. You're already there anyway. What are you gonna lose, right? Nothing. Just give it all your 110% if
I
you have
know.
to.
Right? And look how successful that example is. It's phenomenal.
She's I think she's she's the youngest self-made women billionaire. And I can't even imagine how she started, right? And we can all do that, regardless of age, regardless of race or color. If we put our heart into something, I believe that we can really, make a difference out of something, right? Especially if you have a deeper purpose and a deeper meaning in it. Which I wanted to add with, you were saying earlier that maybe that person, the person in the meeting, is not an ideal client to you. So that would bring us to a different point of conversation, wherein you have to bring in the ideal client to the discovery session, not just anyone, right? Because before you get into that conversation, you have to make sure that she needs you, or that person, you wanted to work with that person. Because if not, it would be hard to really push if you're not a good fit. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Absolutely. It has to be a good fit for everybody, and they have to want what you're offering. Otherwise, what's the point? You're wasting everybody's time. No wonder people don't want to engage in meetings. They feel they're not supposed to be there, and there's no value to them. And I think the fact is that we always all need to be delivering value in every part of our lives. And for me, you see, I see that I'm on a mission to create more leaders, particularly women leaders. So that's the mission that I'm on. And for me, that's bigger than, and I will work with individuals and teams and organizations because that's part of what I want to do. And I think for me, the whole thing about meetings and so on is fundamental to that, because leaders really stand out at meetings. So I love all this that we're talking about today, because it just shows you that when you can do all the things you're talking about, when you have your passion, when you have your purpose, when you get clear on what you need to do and, speak to your ideal client and do all those things, that's when you can truly lead and make an impact in the world. And that example that you've given, Rashfal, is brilliant. Like, that just shows you how many people have given up, how many people got to that 5-minute mark in that 10-minute meeting and thought, that's it, this is not happening. And knowing perhaps that they go home because they've promised their spouse that if they don't start making money this month, they're going to forget about the business, or they're going to go back and take a job, which they can't fit back into that mold anymore. They'd be a pants worker for somebody else. They're just too creative and too entrepreneurial. There's, we have a responsibility ourselves to put ourselves out of that comfort zone and make these things work. And I think meetings are ground zero of where leaders stand out.
Yes, that's correct. And it's also a good way to start building relationships with clients, because clients are not just there so you can take their money. Clients are there so you can start building relationships and make it flourish, because most of my clients, I had them since 2013 and we're still friends right now. Even if we separated, we separate ways, maybe some of my clients started other businesses, some of my clients stopped, but we're in good relationship, and some of them came back, some of them referred other clients, because it's a good relationship. We don't burn bridges. By the way, I checked her name. Her name is Sarah Blakely. So she's
Well
the
done,
owner.
Sarah.
Yep. I thought it's Stacy, but it was an S. I got it right. I got it right. I got right the S. All right. So I'm so excited just talking about meetings, because this is the foundation of everything. And this is where most entrepreneurs, this is the first step towards getting a sale, towards getting a client. And this is something that most entrepreneurs, especially startups, are getting scared of. But when do you think is the right time to listen, and when do you think is the right time to talk to a client? I mean, when would you ask for a sale, or when would you stop? When would you listen, or would you talk?
My favorite time to ask for a sale is to allow the client to do it, because I think that if you have set things up properly, the client will ask to work with you. That's the ideal scenario, right? And it does happen. And when your marketing and all your material tees all that up, it's done the work for you. And we know the research tells us that how people behave now has changed over the years, because so much information is online. So when somebody is ready to have a conversation with you, they're fairly interested in you. And honestly, it's really up to you not to lose the sale at that point. You are in a very, it really is. And it's up to you to continue that good impression and reinforce what you've been saying already. So I think it's about being in alignment. But I think in those meetings, you're going to be setting the agenda, which is good. So you set it out and you open strongly, and you're clear and you're transparent about the objective of the meeting. You're not there to be friends. You might become friendly, but you're there because you've got an objective to achieve for both of you. And I think setting the parameters is really good. And I think being clear about what the results they want. But in those meetings, I still believe that it's important that you listen to the client as much as possible, because there's a very high possibility they're going to give you cues for additional challenges for them. By asking them what does good look like for them, they're going to revert back to problems with previous providers that they've utilized in the past. So they're giving you so many cues. It just seems like a waste not to listen as much as possible. However, the time to speak is when they're moving to a place where you don't agree. So if you don't agree about something, you do have to nicely make your point that you don't agree with something. So if somebody said, all accountants are boring, and you're an accountant and you don't feel you're boring, you need to take them to task in a nice way and in a structured way. Oh, that's so interesting. And I know there are so many jokes about accountants. However, from my experience, I think accountants are, one of the wackiest group of people I know. When you come to the annual party, they go crazy and they do X, Y, Z, PQ and so on. And I think that's important. And it's important for two reasons. It's important that you stand up and state your truth and your position, but it also shows the client that you're not afraid to articulate a contrary viewpoint. And
Yes.
people will typically value that. There's great value in that. Everybody that just says yes, it's nice in the beginning, it feels very comfortable. After a while, you just have that nagging doubt in your head. So you want to be able to trust what the person is saying, and you want to know that they're strong enough to articulate that viewpoint. And it's a great way indeed to build our own confidence to speak up on matters that we believe in and are important to us. Whether accountants are funny or not is not particularly important to me at the moment, but they do get a lot of jokes. So I thought that was a good example.
Funny because I was an accountant. Yes, that was. I graduated the course Bachelor of Science in Accountancy. I practiced it for about a year, but then I got bored with numbers. I realized I don't like math. And I get really, really stressed with numbers. And I don't know how I finished the college, 4 years in college. Ridiculous. And then I started transferring from one industry to another, from marketing to sales and to training, now into consultancy and digital marketing, which is, an amazing experience. And I just started as an accountant, a boring accountant.
Well, you are a case to refute the point. But I think accounting is amazing, and it's so important to be able to read a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement and so on. And that's, of course, the fundamental of being in business. You must know your numbers.
Yes.
And if you don't, it's not going to go well for you.
Yes, that's actually an advantage.
I think that's important to say.
Yeah, that's an advantage for me because I can understand financial statements. And that's what I also offer to all of my clients. I tell to all of my clients that find somebody that knows numbers, because that is not my expertise. And I am not going to offer something that is not my expertise, because when I offer something, I want to make sure that I know what I'm offering, which is going to be my next question. What do you offer to your clients that they can, that they will feel very beneficial from, just so they can get to know you a little bit better, and maybe, they might ask for your service in the future?
Sure. Well, my signature program is CEO Confident. I have a program developed for middle and senior leaders who want to go for the top roles in organizations. So I work with lots of female entrepreneurs and those in corporate in order to help them achieve those very senior jobs in an organization or in an industry body. But what I'd like to offer your listeners here today is that if they'd like to book a 30-minute conversation with me, I'll happily help them get some clarity on their goals and their focus in the future. And I love having chats and learning about people as well. So it's kind of a double win for me, and you will get some clarity as well. So feel free to reach out on that one.
Yes, of course. And I will be asking the link to your calendar so that when we promote, they can just, simply click there and book a call with you. Because right now we're just talking about one area of expertise, just meetings. And we're talking for less than an hour, and it feels like, we just started 5 minutes ago. Right? And what's funny is that we're not really longtime friends. We just met in Facebook, and then just connected once or twice because of the meeting.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because of meetings. And I hope that both of us did well in those in first meeting, right? And it was a great experience that both of us got connected really well. And, we wanted to help each other bring out a message, and bring out a bit of wisdom, especially for starting entrepreneurs, for executives that wanted to, level up at some point,
Yes.
in
Yes.
business or in career. Where can they reach you? Maybe you want to promote your website, your social media pages, so they would know.
Certainly, I'm on many of the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and so on. But the most central place to reach me is via my website, cairnsconsultancy.com. And I think that will be in the show notes, and we'll share that more fully later.
Funny, sorry, I keep on saying Kearns. How do you pronounce the last name again?
I say Cairns.
Cairns. Oh my gosh. Cairns. All right. Sorry about that. I mispronounced that earlier.
I don't hear that. That's interesting because I never correct that because I don't hear that it's different in my head because I'm used to hearing
You're
that.
used to it, yeah.
But there's something about my Irish accent, and also my dad is originally from the east coast of Ireland, and Wicklow, which has a very particular accent. So I think I maybe overpronounce it, but that's how I do it. Cairns is how I say it.
Cairns. Yeah, just like Karen Carpenter with a more schwa or slang Cairns.
Yes.
My gosh.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Fiona. I really enjoyed it. Do you still have any like a parting message or an advice to our audience that you wanted to leave to them? Maybe something that they can think about after listening to the podcast.
I think the main thing is to go do it, and do it badly to begin with, which sounds like terrible advice, but the trick is do it. Start it today. That's my final piece of advice.
Yeah, don't be scared. Because
do it scared. Do it scared.
Even if they're scared, yeah. Even if you're scared, because I can remember this quotation that says, "Courage is not the absence of what's that? Fear. It is the mastery of it." Yeah.
Exactly.
Even if you're scared, you have to do it. Entrepreneurship or leveling up your career, whatever it is that you wanted to do, if it's different, if it's uncomfortable, it's scary. I remember the first time that I jumped to swim because I don't know how to swim, and somebody pushed me. And then when that person pushed me, I kind of like it. So I jumped again, and I still don't know how to swim until now. I will die if you push me, but I keep on jumping, and I don't know why. And I keep on almost drowning.
Well, I actually think that's terrible advice to give people, Rochelle. If you don't know how to swim, please don't jump in the deep end. That bit needs to come with a warning.
Yeah. Because
in the shallow end, if you don't know how to swim.
Yeah. Not too deep waters, of course. Because the only way that you will learn how to swim is by jumping. All right. Of course, with a very safe distance, not too far from the, from where you can reach, you can grab, somebody for help. But because when you're going to start a business, when you're going to do something different, something new, it's really normally scary. But if we have that, purpose, we have that deeper purpose, and we really wanted to share ourselves to the world. And I always call it your gift to the world, because nobody will know that you have a gift unless you tell them you have this something. I have a solution to a problem. Like this one, something, you're very good at meetings, for example, and we just talked about it. No sweat, we just talked about it. But right before we started this podcast, I was kind of a little nervous because this is something that I'm not used to doing, and even if you're nervous, just do it anyway, and you'll end up getting better and better each day. Maybe by the time that you do your 100th podcast, you'll be an expert. Who knows, right? So just keep on doing it. So I guess that's it, Fiona. I'm so thankful that you graced the show today. But I wanted to tell everyone that I will be leaving all your links to your Facebook. It's going to be facebook.com/Kearns Consultancy Global. I hope I got the pronunciation right.
Yes.
All right, and then on twitter.com/Fiona Kearns, Instagram.com/Cairns Consultancy, YouTube.com/user/confident Fiona Cairns, and Cairns Solution Consultancy.com. Again, cairnsconsultancy.com. I will be leaving all the links at the description on this podcast below, and to all the materials, the graphic materials that will be coming out in this podcast episode. You can also find us in Spotify. Please follow us to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/C/Rochefel Rivera. And don't forget to visit my website, where you can also find this podcast at rochefel.com. All right, so I guess that's just it. And thank you so much for tuning in or listening in or watching in our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Fiona, and thank you so much. I am very grateful. I can never be thankful enough for having this opportunity to, talk about something that we both are interested in.
Rochefel, it's been my pleasure. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed this conversation today.
Thank you so much. Bye. Bye, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording now, and I hope that you will tune in to the next episode, maybe next Thursday, for another special guest. All right. Thank you for listening to the Passion and Purpose podcast. Join us next week for another inspiring adventures.